Okay, so welcome back everyone to the live Intersectoral panel, which opens a forward-looking conversation on the role of collections and collections-based organizations in advancing sustainable development, with a particular focus today on the prosperity dimension in terms of fostering inclusive economic growth, decent work, innovation, and community well-being through collections-based work and creative collaboration. To moderate this panel, I'm delighted to welcome my colleague, Alison Heritage, Project Manager for Strategic Planning and Research here at ICROM. So Alison has been leading a number of initiatives on heritage and well-being, and also on cultural capital valuation, which strongly resonate with today's topics. So Alison, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shay. And I'd like to kindly invite our four wonderful panelists, if they could switch their cameras on so everyone can see you. And I will just do a quick introduction. So we're joined today by Vivaldi Ngenzi, who is director of the Rwanda Art Museum and the Rwanda Cultural Heritage Academy. We also have Adala Leeson with us, who is head of social and economic research at Historic England. And I also see Ekaterina Travkina, I'm sorry, stumbling over my pronunciations today, who is the coordinator for culture, creative industries and global events at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, known to many of you as OECD. Welcome, Ekaterina. And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Leslie Weir, who's the president of the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. So welcome to you all. And since we have a short time for this panel, I'm going to dive straight in with the first question, which is, from your perspective, how does cultural heritage, and in particular collections, promote prosperity? And I think I'd like to turn first to you, Ekaterina, if you don't mind. Also from your perspective, working from OECD as well, can you also comment with regards to framing prosperity for us, in terms of beyond economic growth, beyond GDP? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it's really, I'm very happy to join this conference today, and what a fantastic series of sessions of this week indeed. Well, I come from the OECD, as you mentioned, and here in the OECD we work to demonstrate the economic contribution of culture and creative industries to employment, to entrepreneurship, to innovation. So if you need data to advocate for the sector, you can find some in our research. But of course, we do understand and clearly know that the contribution of the sector cannot be just resumed to this data points, how many jobs it creates, how many businesses, etc. And I wanted to start, in fact, with a bit of a positive statement. Well, I'm not a cultural professional. I speak from outside of the cultural world, more from the perspective of economic development. And in the fact of the past few years, we have seen a shift in the understanding and recognition of the role of collection-based institutions as drivers not only of economic but also of social development. So as we heard already throughout this week, traditionally economic development professionals viewed museums and collection-based institutions primarily as attractors that draw visitors who spend money locally. And of course, a significant number of regional development strategies have built on these synergies between heritage and tourism to support local economic growth and urban regeneration. Yet this is quite a narrow vision, and it was in fact expanded in the recent years. So the contribution of museums, for example, to innovation is increasingly acknowledged. For example, museums of arts and crafts as repositories of past knowledge. They inspire new products in creative industries such as fashion and design. And cities support the synergies through fab labs and creative hubs with museums at their core. And of course, beyond this economic impact, the contribution of museums and collection-based institutions to well-being is also gaining wider recognition. Maybe something that is obvious to museum professionals and to cultural institutions professionals is becoming more obvious for people outside of the cultural world. And this understanding was, well, helped in a way by the pandemic, obviously. So museums and prescriptions not taken too seriously only a few years ago are now being introduced in OECD countries, from Canada to Belgium to Italy and many more. And another aspect that we see that is gaining recognition in the economic development discourse is the role of cultural institutions in strengthening local social capital. So we see from different surveys that museums are often more trusted by citizens than newspapers or even local governments, and that libraries, through their work, by helping citizens to navigate information, to work with information, they have become islands of, I don't know, common sense in these storms of misinformation that we experience. So it's just to start with acknowledging that this broader recognition that maybe was obvious to you is really becoming more obvious and more recognized to economic development professionals, which is in turn reflected in a growing number of national and local economic development strategies that highlight these different synergies between different sectors. So maybe that was my starting statement.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think that's fantastic, the way that you've set out, how much what we're talking about is much broader than just the normal financial aspects that are typically considered. I'd like now then to turn to Vivaldi and really ask you very directly, perhaps, how does this work in practice, from your perspective as a museum director?
Thank you, Leeson. I hope you hear me. Yes. So now, from our perspective, we, first of all, from the background of the museum, the Rwanda Art Museum exists since 2006, and most of the collections are from 90s. And so we've realized that the access of them, especially in terms of the public, but also the creatives, we've realized that it not only gives them information about the artists that we have collected, but also it inspires them to create more. And so for us, the best approach was to give the access to the creatives, to the communities, like the access of our collections, but also to put the creatives in dialogue with what we have collected so far. And another approach was to help them to discuss with the community, especially in our premises, because we realized that most of the materials that the artists are using, some of them are imported, yet we have communities that have other techniques that they can rely on. So as we make them collaborate, as we give them the space at our museum and put them in discussions, so it have created an impact the impact that is social, but also economic. And another approach was to document what they are doing and to create the visibility from the public and from the to the audience. And we've realized that we have been also a reference to local artists and especially Rwandan artists, because whoever visits the museum, we are able to connect those living artists who are still creating. Just a small case study is this artist that got connected to an important collector, and those collectors have been collecting from him, using our contact. And this is the third time. Now I have the artworks in my office they are coming to pick. And so those just were the ways of helping them just to prosper in that way, using our collections, our permanent collections, but also creating a dialogue and also giving the space to them and a place to discuss, especially with the communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vivaldi. And that sounds really exciting work, actually. And I was very struck there also about how you really emphasize, we talk about access and getting the public in, but also really getting those creative actors in as well, and using that then as a space to connect and innovate. I'd now like to turn to Leslie. And Leslie, I can't see you on my screen. I hope you're here with us. Yes, you are. There you are. Great. Hi. Sorry, I just had to flip screens there. And really, in a way, put the similar question to you in terms of libraries. How does this work in practice? How do you see this taking place within these institutions?
So, of course, libraries work in great collaboration, as Ekaterina mentioned, with other parts of the GLAM sector, the museums and the galleries and the archives. Libraries are a place where people gather. So, yes, they come to find information and to get access to knowledge. At the same time, they come together to be able to connect. And libraries really are all about prosperity, because they focus on ensuring, working in collaboration with educators, that in fact people can read, that they have literacy. And the Public Library Act of 1850 in the UK said that it was creating public libraries to be able to allow people to better themselves, to allow society to be better. I would say now that we've reframed that, and I know Vickery Bowles from the Toronto Public Library, one of the larger public library systems in North America, was saying that libraries are all about ensuring that individuals are successful. And if each individual in society is successful, then actually the economy will be successful and the country will be successful. Now, libraries aren't just about the traditional colonial collections of print. It's also very important that libraries reflect the cultures of their country, and that they are also capturing the oral histories, the ceremony, the music, the dance. And so they are a place where you can get a full picture of culture, and perhaps of the cultures of a country. I know in Canada, as an example, we not only talk about the two founding nations of French and English, but of course the original peoples, the Indigenous people, the First Nations, Inuit and Métis Nation. And we need to be sure that libraries reflect all of those communities, and that they are celebrating the stories of traditionally marginalized peoples to enable them to be part of the prosperity of their country.
Thank you very much indeed, Leslie. And again, really, it's coming across very clearly to me, this emphasis on using these spaces as interconnection, but also, as you were mentioning there, as essential resources for skills that can be used then in other areas, as you were highlighting. And I love that image that you give, almost of like this 360-degree, as it were, mirror of the diverse cultures that make up our societies. I'd finally now like to turn to Adala and put this question to you, but slightly different, because you, with your economist's hat on, I think, what can you tell us about how we can evidence these links, and what this brings? Also speaking from the experience of historic England, how does cultural heritage promote prosperity from your vantage point? Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. It's so lovely to be here to talk about this, because it's something that consumes my life, is how do we demonstrate the value of heritage? We have such a wonderful sector out there doing such wonderful things, but one of the real challenges for us, I believe, is when we talk about prosperity, is ensuring we talk about it in the broad way that Ekaterina mentioned, is that we cannot just look at orthodox economic metrics, which are market base metrics, it misses a huge part of the value and the things that people actually value. So we're always trying to think of the triangle, which is how cultural heritage sits within the economy, within society, and within the environment. So for many years now, we've been commissioning, undertaking, reviewing lots of research, publishing it through a publication series that Historic England has been doing since 2002 called Heritage Counts. And I guess really from my perspective, there is a real need for us to demonstrate the values and the contribution of heritage to this broad concept of prosperity, because we work in a language community where we understand our technical details. But I will say that when I entered the sector as an economist, I didn't understand and I didn't find the evidence there. People say it, they know it. We know that heritage is good for people. We know people visit heritage. We know that it contributes to health and well-being. But what you need to do when you're speaking within certain circles within their language community is to translate that into visitor expenditure, visitor numbers. You need to translate it into quality life adjusted years, well-being adjusted life years. We need to translate it into avoided carbon, because reusing and restoring helps us do that. So what I advocate and what our team advocates for is really, let's take this excellent work that the sector knows about the richness that our cultural heritage provides, and let's translate it into a language that other wider decision makers understand and use. Because when they don't understand it, when they don't use it, and they don't make decisions based on what we know is that emotions matter, feelings matter, and people feel really strongly about our culture and heritage. And we can include these things in economics, in social research, and in environmental research. Thank you. I've gone over.
No, you haven't at all. That was fantastic, Adala. And I think you raised some really important points there. You know, going beyond saying it and knowing it, we need to translate it. And I thought that was a really powerful what you highlighted there in terms of the other metrics that we need to be thinking about when we translate it in order for it to make sense to other sectors. And in a way that actually is a perfect segue, I think, into my next question to our panel, which is what kind of practical strategies or cross-sector partnerships could enhance this contribution. And I'm going to flip the order round, actually. And so, Adala, I'm going to come back to you, since you were last on the first question. Now, if you can start us off on this second question. So how do you see that we need to work with other sectors in order to be able to emphasize that translation? Thanks.
So one of the things we do know, and we've discovered over time, is heritage is diverse. We've got lots of diversity. It tells so many different stories of so many different communities. So it makes it complicated. And so that's why I think many people haven't done it. And that's why it is the duty of us as a heritage sector to do it. And what we've been working on recently is how do we create a framework? Because one of the things we find is we do a lot, lots of organizations are doing a lot, but we're not doing it under a joint framework. So it comes across as piecemeal, as fragmented, and doesn't make that cohesive story. So at the moment, we're working with the UK's Department for Culture, Media and Sport on a program called the Culture and Heritage Capital program. And I'm what they call a principal investigator on a project, really trying to develop this joint framework that enables us to really think very much, it's an economic-led framework, but very much enables us to think about prosperity in its broader sense. And in doing this work, it's been so interesting because I've been working in the sector for 11 years, but it really means when we're trying to think about the transmission from heritage as a thing to well-being as the final outcome, which is what we see as the final outcome. We've been on a journey. We've been through psychological literature, which is so articulates so well how aesthetics, experience, or perceived authenticity, how that matters to health outcomes, mental health outcomes. Neuroscientific research tells us how we react to certain things and why we feel certain things, and therefore why we value and we choose those things. We're also going into sociological literature, which examines the biosphere and how it interacts with people. So it's really diverse. And I think one of the things is within this framework, we really want it to move beyond sort of the things we do into much more academic literature, which explores these concepts within this framework. We also really want to engage our stakeholders more broadly, because it can be quite intimidating in trying to put these different communities together, and how we translate what we're doing in economics into something that is clear and understandable to our stakeholders. But also a very big area for us is private sector. There's a lot of consultants doing a lot of work for different public sector bodies, or and it's reaching to them and ensuring that we're all kind of again singing from the same hymn sheet. So that's really our goal.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Adala. And you know, that just sounds absolutely fascinating, you know, ranging right the way through to neuroscientific research and new findings there. I'm going to now turn to Leslie and ask you, you know, how do you see cross-sectoral partnerships? And we've had some very exciting stuff from Adala. Where do you see that going in the museum? In the libraries sector?
So in libraries, partnerships are actually critical. Libraries partner across all different kinds of organizations, and it's something that IFLA works hard to support its members in understanding the impact, potentially, of partnerships. Libraries are about their collections and about their spaces and the people, and ensuring that they enable access. So they will often collaborate with other GLAM organizations, as I mentioned earlier, but they also have many community partnerships where they're working with community leadership, with representation groups, of course, with local government, with civil society organizations, and they feel that these partnerships are sort of beyond kind of a project approach. It's much more about building relationship and maybe doing a series of projects and being able to take advantage of opportunities to be able to support the local priorities. There's also work that's going on to try to reduce the barriers to access to information. And that's an important aspect. What I would say is that libraries often work in close collaboration as well with law enforcement and customs officers about the worry about the trafficking of cultural property. They also work with local authorities around the formulation of artificial intelligence policies, trying to make sure that artificial intelligence can be used in an ethical way to be able to serve society, and are quite focused on the challenges that we have today in terms of sustainability and climate. And so collaborate with climate authorities, trying to ensure that we have a resilient environment, and that we can also protect our libraries and their collections from climate change and things that intervene with that. At the same time, we've got some kind of exciting stories. IFLA has done a lot of work on the SDGs, and we've created a series of stories that you can access online. Kind of a really lovely story is about the Singapore National Library Board, where they partner with the Autism Resource Center, and they've established a satellite digitization center where individuals with autism can be employed as digital services assistants to digitize documents from their massive heritage collections. And this creates a really fabulous collaboration that serves the community and creates very great opportunities for employment for people from the group of people who are living with autism. Well, lastly, I'd just like to highlight at Libraries and Archives Canada, we have a rather exciting collaboration where we're actually going to be moving our public services in the national capital in with the Ottawa Public Library. And so we'll be working federally with a municipal government and a municipal library. And at the same time, our equal partner in that is the Indigenous host nation, the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And so we are creating a new building where the design has been influenced from the outset in working in close collaboration with two communities, one in Quebec and one in Ontario, Kitigan-Zibi and Pikwaktagon. And currently those communities are working with us as we get ready for the big opening in 2026 to ensure that the programming and the events and even the materials we're going to sell in the shop reflect the local Indigenous community and can showcase their history and their stories, and that when youth and elders from the community come in, they will see themselves in the library along with all of the other people that live and work and enjoy life in the Ottawa area. So thank you for that opportunity to describe this exciting project.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for sharing with us about that. And it really is very exciting to hear about, and wonderful also to hear that example also about how directly opening up employment opportunities for people. And I loved also the description of the way in which those spaces are being designed together with the community. It's really inspiring. Vivaldi, I'd like now to turn to you and ask you about cross-sectoral partnerships, that enhance this contribution to prosperity, and how you see that working from where you sit.
Thank you. Now, for us, we've been trying also to collaborate with other sectors, especially the education sector, because we've realized that museums, people who go to museums have been regarded as tourists and like something that is not a primary need, and especially for locals. But we believe that if we collaborate with the Ministry of Education and also schools, as they bring students, because we have reduced the prices for schools especially, and sometimes also we allow them to come to the museum for free. And we believe that if we influence the young generation, so this will be a habit and a culture, and also culture is also part of the primary needs. And this will also influence decision makers, especially in terms of considering museums as a primary destination, and also that the collections and what they find in museum also talk to them. But also we are trying to convince our government especially to engage corporates, especially because we've been facing lack of fundings, especially in terms of collection. And we really need to explore this approach of engaging corporates, banks, and other stakeholders that can contribute to the collections. Because I'm not sure if you know about Tour du Rwanda, which is a cycling competition. Now we are receiving UCI in Rwanda. When you look how corporates contribute to the sports and to those competitions, so we are trying to engage them also to contribute to the cultural sector, especially to the collections, especially to the artists. And Leeson also mentioned about the synchronization of also through research. We are engaging researchers also to turn what we are doing into a language that the decision makers can understand, so that the sectors would be also see the cultural sector as the industry, or somewhere also they can contribute to increase the economy of the country. So those are the approaches that we have been using to engage them, to allow them to be part of our projects. And currently also we are starting engaging, especially to the feasibility study of our museum, to modernize it and to increase the infrastructures. And the partnerships that we have with the artists and also with the architects and other collaborators, we want to use them to also to give them the voice and the say to what we are doing. And that through partnerships, we understand that what we are doing and what we are, decisions that we are making will just also be sourced from those partners and from those that they are telling us and advising us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Vivaldi. And I think you raise a really important point there about, you know, the importance of how to say, engaging also beyond the typical sphere that the cultural sector does, but also with corporates and the private sector, and really getting that important funding, you know, as additional funding sources and cooperation there. And finally, I'd like to turn to you, Ekaterina, and from your sort of more, how to say, international perspective here then, and from the OECD, how do you see this in terms of cross-sectoral partnerships? What can we emphasize? What can we strengthen?
Well, maybe just not to repeat what colleagues already mentioned, I wanted to maybe underline a couple of things that are important for these partnerships to work, and more importantly, even for museums and collection-based institutions to deliver on this broader mission. So I wanted to mention maybe three things. One, of course, it's about money, because financial sustainability is needed to deliver the core mission, right? And this is a sine qua non. And we know that some museums were not able to reopen after the pandemic, and many still operate with reduced budgets. So let's not give more tasks to institutions that sometimes struggle to deliver their core tasks even. Then what we try to promote also as a message through our work is that more longer term budget planning is needed beyond one fiscal year, right? Especially as any kind of this broader impacts, local development impacts or well-being impacts need time to materialize. So it's not like a matter of 6 months or 12 months. So a longer vision, budget revision is needed as well. And in some countries, in some places, it's important to provide access to museums and other, well, GLUMs, as you say, access to and eligibility for non-cultural budgets to projects that deal with education, social inclusion, employability, etc. So this will be the true recognition of the role of cultural institutions in these broader partnerships that try to solve big issues. So the second thing I wanted to mention is that, obviously better evaluation is needed to help museums measure and demonstrate the impact that they bring beyond tickets sold. And these evaluations need to be co-created with other partners, combining different methods, sociology methods, medical methods, etc. And not all will have the resources to do this kind of robust and costly evaluations. So in that sense, the work that UK is doing, Historic England and the Department for Culture in the UK, and yourself, ICROM, and maybe ourselves can be very helpful and to address this big need, as well as the work that is being done by big museums like the Louvre here in France or many others that do have the resources to conduct this kind of evaluations as then a public good to the broader community. And of course, the third thing is, well, there is a need for capacity building, because of course heritage professionals are not trained to deliver health, well-being, or economic development outcomes. So there is a bit of a need to invest in the capacity building to help them not do this, but also to partner in a meaningful way with other institutions as well. So maybe these were the 3 points I wanted to mention.
Thank you very much indeed, Ekaterina. And I think indeed those are 3 very important points in terms of money, the long-term perspective on that, to allow these how to say, the value of these collaborations really to give them chance to grow and to come through, and especially that emphasis on the skills training that's needed. I'd now like to open this conversation up a little bit more to questions from those who are with us today. And I just to start us off, I mean, I have a question here that's been raised, which is with regards to sustainable development, which is a rights-based agenda. And also, I was struck very much by the comment also by Adala, and indeed raised by our keynote today, about how some of the economic models that we're working with at the moment, that are kind of more traditional economic models are really these orthodox metrics, as you referred to them, Adala, are really missing a lot of value. And how can we raise awareness and use of the rights perspective, but at the same time, so we don't overuse those economic models whilst, emphasizing this connection? And I think I'll go to you, Leslie, first with that one, because I think you were raising some very important points that also touch on the whole issue of rights as well.
I think this is such an important area. It also relates to when you have a good rights agenda, then you actually have a public good. And I think that libraries are all about trying to ensure that all of the voices are heard and that people recognize themselves in what they see in libraries and museums and galleries. And at the same time that we focus much more on broadening that economic sort of definition to be able to ensure that we are also considering the impact that the cultural organizations have. Sometimes we focus on, how many exhibits we've done or how many people came through the exhibit, but we don't necessarily focus on what the social impact of what we've done is. And in Canada right now, we have a study that's going on in our major public libraries where they're actually looking at the social impact of the interaction that citizens have with the library. And then they are able to present that to the decision makers, to the influencers, to demonstrate how it actually does ensure that people have the rights they need to be able to get access to what they require to be able to be successful. And I think sort of shifting the way we look at this is very important. Just on one other note, I find it very interesting that around 10 years ago, there was quite a bit of focus as well on cultural diplomacy. And libraries are a very big player, as are museums and artists and authors in cultural diplomacy. And there seems to have been a shift to more focusing diplomacy on those pure economic indicators that you've referenced, rather than seeing the importance that cultural activities and can play in terms of creating those relationships between countries and looking more globally at the economic impacts.
Thank you so much, Leslie. And I think those are some really powerful points that you've just made there. And it really also highlights, and I think going back to what Ekaterina kind of mentioned right at the very beginning, is that all of these aspects have an economic value. Now, it's not, the health, whether it's cultural diplomacy, or all of this has an economic value. And I was very struck what you mentioned there about social impact. I'd like to turn to Vivaldi. Vivaldi, can you give us your thoughts on that? Because you also mentioned very much about inclusivity and also improving access to museum spaces, but also the impact that has in terms of socio and economic terms and the visibility for that. Could you comment a little bit more on that, picking up on what Leslie has just said? Thanks.
Thank you. Just considering the accessibility, especially of the collections to the museum, for us, it was a kind of an experiment that we were trying just to do, and to see how impactful it will be have on the artists, especially the emerging artists, because we had realized that there was a gap between those who created early 90s up to 2005 and the ones who were creating, especially early 2015. So it was a kind of putting them in dialogue, but also allowing them to know who were the previous artists. And these not only have impacted them socially, but also economically, because let me just talk about what we call the intellectual property, because they were also not aware of copyrights and intellectual property. And you could find some of the artists tending to copy paste what others have been doing. And they were not aware of that it's also punished by the law, but also the public is seeing what they are doing. And career-wise, it's not going to take them anywhere. So it was a kind of an education, first of all, but also to inspire them to come up with their proper signature, but also being inspired from others, from other artists. And another thing was that giving access to the museum. It was a kind. Our museum is no longer regarded as a classic museum, whereby the curator and the director of the museum is the one, or she's the one, who decides what to do. But also the artists, they have the voice, and they have been our ambassador. They have been the ambassadors to the museum. And as we create the visibility of our collections, but also of the artists in general, so it has been impactful for both the museum, but also for both the creative sector. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vivaldi. And I think that, also what you're highlighting there with regards to, there's so many things we could touch on here, really, but the importance of IP rights and also being able to protect your own IP for, people working in the creative industries is really, really important. I've got a question here for Adala, actually, with regards to the time frame for the work with the DCMS, the Cultural and Heritage Capital framework that you mentioned. When is it due out for people to start to be able, when will it be available for people to be able to start using it? And also the person asking the question, this is from Helen Wilson. Is there an opportunity also for people to feed into it, to also add their perspectives?
Yes, definitely. And we're really keen to hear from people. We're just about to do quite a small survey with international stakeholders, which will be coming from an organization called Heritage Strategies International. And I will share links with Alison and Ikram that I'll be really keen to share with everyone to hear what people's perspectives on this are, because I know that it's not, it can feel quite threatening, the use of economics as a tool, and it's just how do we communicate this with our stakeholders? How do we ensure that we hear people and adapt our model to better capture what arts, culture and heritage sectors deliver in terms of cultural value? So that's ongoing. The project completes in February. The project I'm working on completes in February, end of February 2026. And we have lots of stakeholder engagement sessions, and there is an email, which if you're interested, please do send me an email and we will reach out. We have a big database of people that we're contacting and inviting to workshops to talk about this. So I'm happy to add that email into this conversation.
Great, thanks very much indeed, Adala. And I think finally in this round of questions, I'd just like to turn to you, Ekaterina, and just ask you, do you think that this is something then that could be picked up and perhaps extended to other contexts beyond the UK? I mean, is this the sort of thing that OECD, in terms of developing new approaches and metrics to actually being able to evidence this contribution. Can you share with us your thoughts on that?
No, definitely. Well, we see a lot of need and a lot of demand for better estimates, not only of economic impact of the sector. Well, even calculating the economic impact is not an easy task. We can do it sometimes at national level, not for all countries, but it's much more difficult at city level, for example, to say how many jobs the cities have in cultural sectors, for example. Even this is still very difficult. So there's a lot to do in these areas still. But yeah, calculating the social impact is such an urgent agenda. But I do think the CMS is really leading the way there very much so. And for us, yeah, this is one of the areas of work where we would really want to step in and contribute, also building on the work that OECD has been doing on well-being in general and the well-being framework, etc. So putting culture into those frameworks would be quite a step forward. And what we are also looking into is, well, you mentioned this right to culture concept in a way. Maybe it's about equality of access to cultural opportunities across geographies, across incomes, across educational levels. It's about putting, in one of the ways to do it in practical terms for us is to try to put culture on the map. There are so many data generated by OECD, also spatial data, but there's so little culture data in those on those maps. So maybe this is something that we are looking into for the like a future work area for ourselves there.
Thank you so much, Ekaterina. And I must say, it is very exciting to hear about all this work at different levels and also these really practical examples that we've been hearing about as well. I'm just going to bring this then to a conclusion and just ask each of our panelists just very, very quickly to summing up, looking ahead, what is your message for the future then with regards to using culture to promote prosperity? I'd like to start off with Vivaldi. What's your message?
So my message would remain to give the accessibility to the collections for the institutions that are having them, to give access to everyone who wants to access them and create more visibility, but also document those collections as long as they can, because in the nearest future we won't be here, but the young generation and the next generation also would have more information about what we've collected so far. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vivaldi. And what about you, Ekaterina? What would be your message?
Well, maybe it's not a message, but it's a wish for our own work. And I really connect with what Adala was saying is, well, maybe our mission is very much to translate into economic terms the value that the culture brings, while also remaining credible to the cultural sector. So not being not translating in a primitive way, and still really acknowledging the whole value that the sector brings. So that's a bit of a objective.
Thank you so much. And Leslie, your message or your wish, if you like?
My wish is that culture would be recognized as having so many complexities and facets, which is what makes it so rich. And when you have museums and libraries and archives and galleries that can celebrate and that can just expose people to the stories and to the artifacts of their cultures, but also of other people's cultures, then it creates, I think, a much healthier environment where people can celebrate themselves, but they can also celebrate others. And I think that libraries, archives, galleries, and museums play such a key role in bringing people together and not focusing on where perhaps we are polarized or have differences, but where we can have civil discussion and debate and learn each other's stories and celebrate those stories. And I think it would be wonderful to see all of the glam sector really reflected in the cultural objectives that we're all trying to create a better world.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I think that's a very good ambition there. And now, finally, Adala, your message, your vision, your wish.
Yeah, so my wish is that we will take that responsibility and be an active voice on lots of different platforms. We're only talking about socioeconomics here. There are others, of course, but I really think it is in our gift, and we should do it in order to secure the future of our cultural heritage. And I guess for me, I'm always surprised by how people outside the sector really struggle to make that connection that we've discussed today about cultural heritage and prosperity. So it's really, let's be active, because by not engaging in that conversation, you are engaging passively and letting others do things to our cultural heritage. I just wish we would take back that control, and I want to see more heritage economists out there. That's my dream.
Thank you very much indeed, Adala. Perhaps we should all become cultural heritage economists to some degree in terms of advocating for it. Well, I think that was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. I just really want to give a big thanks to all of our panelists, Adala, Leslie, Vivaldi, and Ekaterina. And I would also really like to thank those of you who are joining us in the audience today. It's been fantastic, and I'm now going to hand over back to Jose Luis.
And a big thanks to you all, also, Alison. I mean, together with our heartfelt thanks to our distinguished panelists for your invaluable insights and inspiring messages and views for the future. I'm sure this perspective shared here today will meaningfully inform the conference outputs and recommendations, and help shape future action across sectors. And this conversation has been yet another powerful reminder of the potential of collections to contribute to inclusive and sustainable development when we work together across sectors with intention and creativity. So a big thanks to you all, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue beyond today. Thank you so much.